Welcome to the ICO Show. I'm David Siegel. Today we're joined by Omar from Energi Mine in London. Is that right?
In Manchester. Yeah.
In Manchester. Oh, that's right. We were going to do this show live together in the same room, but circumstances interfered. So here we are. Omar, tell us a bit about, you've got a pretty interesting background in energy, and try to give us a bit of the energy landscape before we jump into your project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off actually in what are now called dirty energy, trading coal and gas and a bit of oil, that horrible black stuff, and moved very quickly into electricity trading. So probably about 10 or 11 years ago, I started off trading electricity. So this was really switching power stations on and off from our trading floor in London on behalf of a big utility. And then moved very quickly after the sort of physical asset optimization stuff, moved into trading some offshore wind, which is really interesting in Dublin. So obviously Ireland, some of the best wind resources in the world. And trading wind is often really difficult because, you know, we've all seen the weather forecast and how difficult it is to predict weather 2 days in advance. So trying to predict weather and forward hedge that is really difficult. So did that for a number of years as well before moving to, I suppose, a really unfashionable side of the market as a speculator in the power and gas markets in Europe. So did that for a giant utility in Europe, actually Swedish state-owned, and traded cross-border. So most of Europe is connected up by pipelines and cables. So what we would try and do is trade the spread between those countries and capture the value there. And then at some point I decided, well, someone's probably using this energy at some point. It's not just circulating in the wholesale market. So really looked at how users were using electricity and decided, wow, there's a whole section of consumers that don't really have a great awareness of what's going on and how to hedge and how to buy. So set up my own.
In other words, consumers just pay whatever price. They don't have any idea about pricing.
Yeah, massive lack of transparency. So exactly as you said, you know, as we pay our bills, so we get this nice colorful bill through the door and we just pay it.
Yeah, it's mysterious, right?
Yeah, no one understands it. And I'd wrongly assumed at the time that, you know, big corporations who are spending millions would have a big team looking at this. And it's a little bit more sophisticated than that, but not much. So I decided to set up my own commodity trading house, which helped end users to trade their power and gas, and based that here in Manchester in the UK. Ran that for 5 years, grew it from 2 to 50 people.
How does an end user trade his own power? You mean like big buildings and companies?
Yeah. So generally we targeted businesses who were spending more than £1 million sterling on energy. We trade them, whether they were multi-site, international. We'd amalgamate that, place it with one supplier, and we sit in between the supplier of energy and the consumer of energy, and we do those sort of hedging activities on their behalf.
I see.
So grew that. We got up to about €3 billion under management. I sold that company actually last week.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And then started Energi Mine in January. So Energi Mine was doing the same thing, but was really looking at how AI and blockchain could really help in this space, because the energy industry in general, you know, it's very easy to get caught up in a bubble when you're in the tech sector. I think everything, you know, you've got super smart people, you've got really efficient processes.
Yeah.
The energy industry is probably 10 or 15 years behind. So we've got very manual processes, things still being run on Excel spreadsheets and databases, and there's a whole lot of inefficiencies there, which ultimately we as consumers pay for.
So your idea was to take what you were doing for multi-million-dollar energy spends and automate it so you could do it for consumers at their level.
Exactly. Yeah. So what we tried doing is automating what we could. So our view is very generally, if a machine can do something better than a human, then the machine should do it. And us humans should concentrate on the more complex tasks that machines can't do. So obviously we started looking at the combination of using AI and blockchain to achieve those purposes. And that's sort of what Energi Mine's been doing for the last 9 months.
So give us some example of how that's actually working right now.
Yeah, so a simple example of the AI really, and automation rather than AI, I suppose, is if you imagine we've got a big retailer with 500 stores UK wide. In the UK, you have half hourly meter readings,
Okay.
and within each half hourly period, you have about 26 different charges. So what most people don't realize is that an electricity bill is only about half electricity. The rest of it is taxes, distribution, transmission.
Yeah.
So imagine you've got 48 half hours a day, 365 days a year. You've got 500 stores, and you can go back maybe 5 or 6 years. And each of those half hourly periods has got 25 different
That's
facts
a
that
lot
need
of
verifying.
data.
Yeah, 1.3 billion different data sets that need verifying. So
Right.
the way the industry approached that at the moment was, funnily enough, on Excel. So it was just manpower. So we put three analysts on it, and it would take them about 2 months to do that task, which is insane, really.
Yeah.
So we devised a sort of an automation and AI model that now does that same task in 20 minutes with no human interaction. So the bots will open the email, they'll perform the task, write the report, and email itself back to the customer. So it was a really easy way to start making this industry more efficient, ultimately with the goal to bring costs down. So we're not paying the margin for big utility companies to have 1,000 analysts sat in an office somewhere.
So you're now able to go down to the level of, say, a store or an apartment building, so that a building that spends £100,000 a year or so, right? Because I mean, you're not all the way down at the consumer level yet.
No, that's right, exactly. So I think the thing that stops you going down to the consumer level is really the adoption of so-called smart meters.
Yeah.
So if you have a smart meter at home, which many people do, and in the UK it's mandated by law that we're going to have some, although the deadline is getting pushed further and further out. You can then really zero in to exactly what you're consuming, and if you understand what you're consuming, you can start to manage. All of a sudden, if you see pence and pounds and pence flying out of your account every time you're leaving appliances on, that makes a big difference than just looking at kilowatt hours.
Sure. Now, tell us about what's the penetration of smart meters in the UK right now at the consumer level?
Yeah, I mean, the uptake has been still quite slow because the onus is on the supply companies. So the supply companies have to push this out. So we're still at very, very low adoption rates. I mean, less than 20%.
Oh, really?
So we've got a long way to go. Really.
And what do you know about the US market or other European markets?
Yeah, so we trade in all deregulated markets. So we do have clients across the world in those markets. So in the US, it's a really good example because in the US, it's quite fragmented. So it's generally state by state. You can have two states next to each other. One will be deregulated, meaning you're free to move utilities. Others is almost there's no deregulation whatsoever. So generally, the highest level of deregulation are to be found really in a lot of Western Europe. So obvious examples: UK, Germany, Netherlands. Southern Europe is in the process of deregulating, and the other big global markets that are deregulated are Australia, Canada.
Tell me about smart meter adoption. What's the level in the United States and Germany and in France?
Yeah, so in Germany a little bit higher, but really, I mean, France, you picked a really good example. That France only really became fully deregulated, if you want to call it that, last year. So France was sort of even further behind the curve.
So they're less than 20%. Germany might be 30% or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact statistics, but Germany seems to be leading in this field a little bit. The problem is you haven't got any. Even with the EU, you haven't really got any solid common policies between all those markets, and it makes things really difficult. Which is why normally the innovation you see in the B2B sector first, because then sort of customers of that size naturally have these smart meters.
Are there common data standards, like some XML standard or something?
There aren't. There's not even a common database of this data.
Yeah.
There is, in terms of what we have in the UK, you have half-hourly meters. So each meter sends a pulse out every half hour. In Germany, you have 15-minute data.
But do you have like different brand meters that put out different formats of data, and it's very difficult to?
You do, yeah.
Oh.
So you have lots of metering companies. They put data out. Some are really good and give you great quality data. Others not so good.
Great.
So what we're doing is you're dealing. You can start to see the problems that the big utilities have. And yeah, I know it's easy for us to criticize these big multi-billion-dollar utilities, but the fact is, it's incredibly the data and information is disparate. Which is obviously why we're so keen on using blockchain as a common.
Now, what about in the United States? I remember there was a Google Home service for a couple of years that promised to help you dial in your energy use on, like, really you could see your energy footprint on there. And then it went away.
Right.
What do you know about that? Anything?
Wow. Well, no, I wasn't aware of the Google project there, but I mean that is definitely the future. So if you reverse back sort of 20 years pre deregulation, we had this concept called time of day pricing, and you still have it a little bit now. So exactly as you would think, energy costs different amounts depending on the time of day, so your tariff would reflect that.
Sure.
Then we sort of moved away to a more flat price, or maybe a night and day price. We're going to move back to time of day pricing simply because the existing infrastructure, and this is whether it's the US or the UK, the existing infrastructure will not be able to cope. So the biggest example I can give is electric vehicle uptake. So all governments are keen to push out electric vehicles, but if you think what's going to happen, when you and me come back from work, typically it's going to be between 5 and 6 o'clock, everyone's going to plug their electric vehicles in and the grid's going to be stressed. So, how do you deal with a problem like that? And again, the parallel I draw is probably everyone watching this video has used Uber at some point and has experienced so-called surge pricing. Now, we'd probably use a different term for the electricity market, not surge pricing, but the concept applies the same. So if you imagine, one of the things we're developing now is everyone's plugging their vehicle in at the same time. We want to avoid that. And what we want to do is, you might want to plug your vehicle in and you need it charged for 7 a.m., but you're not really bothered whether that's 4 to 7 a.m. or whether it's midnight to 3 a.m.
Right.
So you're going to be charged a different price at a different time. And that needs complex algorithms to run automatically, because you as a user, you want it to be frictionless as possible. You want to press a button on an app and go to sleep. So that's one of the biggest challenges for grid operators worldwide now.
Well, you wanted to negotiate, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. So this all starts to become really interesting when you team it up with generation and storage. So 10 years ago, particularly in Europe, you had a big boom of solar panels because the subsidy regimes were so good. You had the same thing in Germany, to the extent that in the south of Germany, you had so much solar, you get negative prices now in summer.
Because they subsidize everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So when you start teaming that up with battery storage, which has been the holy grail for the energy markets for years now, and there's plenty of people, from LG, Samsung, Tesla, who are developing solar storage products.
Right.
That's when it becomes really interesting, because at the moment, what anyone who's got their own generation in their own home, you've got this crazy situation where you're selling your energy, excess energy, to an energy company, and they're putting a margin on it and selling it back to your neighbor. Which you're doing all the hard work and they're capturing the value.
Right.
So some of the potential applications of blockchain here to create this peer-to-peer model, where actually the owner of the asset is deriving value by participating in a peer-to-peer exchange. And when you team that up with a whole load of battery storage, that's when it becomes interesting, because the equivalent of one gas-fired power station could be the same thing as 10,000 of people like us with batteries and storage on our system.
That's right. Of course. So people should be able to trade energy and make money off what's in their batteries, and other people can suck it up and store energy overnight so that during the day they get a break on pricing, all this kind of smart grid stuff.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Is that happening to much extent someplace else? Dubai, United States, Japan, anywhere? Who's ahead?
Yeah, so leading the field in the storage area, definitely Germany, Korea are taking a lead in this. The UK has fallen behind a little bit, but it's sort of catching up. But storage is now sort of gaining that traction that solar had. You know, we've had solar prices collapsing really in terms of the cost of the tech, which is great. You know, so it's a great thing, and you're starting to see the economics make sense for solar. So
is Germany now subsidizing battery purchases?
I don't believe so. I think it will take time for the subsidy regimes to come through for batteries, and there's really an argument as to whether we would even need subsidies for batteries with some of the economic models that we're seeing now.
Okay, so now tell us about your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So given what we've seen in the energy industry, it's really hard for the big utilities to tell you to save energy when their model is based on selling you as much energy as possible at the highest possible price.
Right.
So what we really decided to do was, well, how can, you know, our goal is to reduce global energy demand, but how can we do that? And, you know, governments have tried for years, not with great deals of success. So we decided to come up with a blockchain-based token model, which incentivizes energy saving behavior for consumers. So what happens is it's a reward system based on blockchain that gets you tokens if you engage in energy saving behavior. So for example, if you take low carbon transport to work, or if you buy energy efficient appliances or buy an electric vehicle, you get awarded the token. And then that token you can use to pay your energy bill or charge your electric vehicle, or obviously cash out on a token exchange. So it's really designed to transfer the value to those helping to reduce demand, rather than the current system, which, you know, there's very little incentive to switch your light off as you go out of the room.
So do you need tokens to participate in the system, or can you just earn tokens without having to put any tokens in?
Yeah, so you need to be signed up to the scheme, but to be signed up to our platform, the first level is free, so you can earn tokens for free. So really, this is based on the participation of people like local transport authorities, manufacturers, and corporates. And we're in the fortunate position of, you know, a lot of these corporates are our customers anyway. So the blockchain trials that we have with them, you know, you're talking about running these schemes with organizations that have thousands of staff that can sort of trial this fairly easily.
So you sell the tokens to the company, and then they say, we're going to play the energy game.
Absolutely. So other institutions can build their reward platforms on our infrastructure. So for example, we have one customer of ours, they have around 6,000 staff. And what they said is that we really want to know the energy footprint on an opt-in basis of our workforce to see how energy efficient we are. We as an employer will award energy tokens depending on how people are getting into work and how people are treating energy in the workplace. And that's all managed through a really simple app and web interface.
First question I wanted to ask, and I've been meaning to ask this, but I forgot. Can a power plant tell when you turn on a blow dryer at home?
So no, they can't. They can see what comes through a meter. Typically what you have is you have this concept of metering and sub-metering. So if you have a large business, you can see, if you have 1 meter for a whole factory, the energy company would be able to see, or through the metering company, what's going through that meter. You can then have sub-meters on specific pieces of equipment. So this is, you know, the air conditioning unit.
They can transmit information for that piece of equipment. But can you see any? I heard from somebody, there's a startup or two that look at the signature. That's coming through the meter.
You can, yes. So there's a number of companies out there now that sort of micro target, so you can see by zone. So you can see in a typical retail store or a home, you can see this is coming from my lounge, or this is coming from my kitchen, and so on and so forth. And really, that sort of, as I'll call it, micro targeting is the future, because if you need to translate that from kilowatt hour to pounds and pence before it becomes real for people.
Sure. So are you providing a baseline to companies to say, okay, this is where you are now, and is it based on the usage in their homes, or is it just in the company at the company facilities?
Yeah, so our system will apply to both. So it can be used in a B2B environment where you've already got so-called smart meters. If consumers at home have smart meters, we can do the same concept in a domestic setting. You know, a typical example of how consumers can get involved in it is if their local transport authority is running this scheme, every time they touch in their card on a metro system or an electric bus or whatever it may be, we can plug in. Absolutely. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We want to plug into existing APIs and existing feeds, because a lot of this tech already exists in terms of the data is out there, but there's just nothing interesting being done with the data.
So they can get points that way. Now, when then I guess the company has incentive to get everybody on a smart meter. That would be the first step, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and by legislation, everybody's due to get a smart meter anyway. Certainly in the UK and some European countries.
So then, I guess then they also can pump in their data from home, and then try to show that they're winning and getting points by changing their output, what comes through the meter over time.
Yeah, I think you get into a really interesting field then of gamification of this. So people like to look at on an app, how am I doing compared to my neighbor or my peer group,
for example,
or my team.
Leaderboard, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so have you started that yet, or is that your proposal for after your ICO?
Yeah, we started a number of projects. So we started building the reward platform, but the bulk of the post-ICO activity will be to build that reward platform. The second area that the ICO sort of funding will be used for is to build this battery platform. So we touched upon batteries earlier on. We've already created an MVP which simulates 10,000 domestic batteries, and we use our deployed AI models to control those batteries to charge and discharge, so that in aggregate, those batteries are acting like a gas-fired power station.
Right. So, and the tokens will help do that too. So you can just say, I give permission to the system to manage my battery and grid activity, and then you can try to maximize an entire area as opposed to one person's.
Absolutely right. And the token model in that respect is an access token to use the platform.
So you're selling one token, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Or is there an access token and a points token?
No, there's one token that's used for both. So it has multiple applications. So it could be used as membership for the battery trading exchange, but you can also earn those tokens and spend them on things like charging your vehicle up and so on.
Right. Could also help them buy batteries.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're speaking to some very large car manufacturers at the moment who've expressed interest in, how sometimes when you buy a new car and they give you a £500 fuel allowance, what we suggested to the car manufacturers is that if you give them a whole slug of energy tokens, because energy tokens are being developed as a common currency for electric vehicle charging. So we're awarded a contract with an electric truck company to create a cryptocurrency-based payment system for charging their trucks, which is obviously going to be based on energy tokens. Okay,
so you just touched on an important topic I want to get into, and I don't have much more time. I want to talk about it more in another show, but the concept of a common kilowatt second or kilowatt minute token that represents the actual energy. Your token is a unit of payment and access, right? So tell me about tokens that represent the energy.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And we thought, this probably took up the most of our time along the last 9 months since we've been deciding whether to do an ICO or not, is could we come up with a concept that you have one token representing a kilowatt hour of energy, for example.
Yeah.
And that so-called tokenomics problem, it is quite difficult to solve with the energy industry just because of the lack of stability of having a token listed. Because you're always going to have, if you want to make this global and worldwide, the cost of a kilowatt hour of energy can range from anywhere from 3 or 4 cents all the way up to 15 or 20 cents globally. So it's a very difficult exercise to be able to link a token to a kilowatt hour of electricity.
Okay. I have a suggestion. I have an architectural plan for how to do this. We met at an energy token conference, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is too many independent groups launching their own kilowatt hour, kilowatt minute token that is not going to be a standard because it just benefits one group. And I would like to put together a standards group and have a meeting and make my proposal, because I think that's exactly what we need, kind of what we would call a common good token that everyone can share as a foundational layer, and then we add value on top of that.
great. I mean, that sounds fantastic. You know, we're certainly up for collaborating. We're all trying to solve the same problem here. So yeah, we'd be very interested in taking part in that group.
Let's get the right people in the room. I'm serious. I
Great.
want to make a proposal to the UK. You know, whoever will listen in the UK energy grid.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can put together a group of stakeholders here, and if we can get a group, we'd be interested in meeting and discussing how we can create that, because everybody's got the same problem with.
Right. So this is what my book Pull is about: building these common frameworks that everyone can use. Also, can we separate energy from carbon, or do you have to talk about carbon with everybody because that's the only thing they really can listen to?
Yeah, no, you can definitely separate it. So by having the energy data, essentially we've got the carbon data as well. So that's generally.
Well, it depends how you get it, right? So it depends if it's renewable or not. So
yes, yeah, absolutely.
But I hope I'm not interested in carbon tokens. I don't think that makes any sense because I don't think it changes anything.
Sure.
So I hope it makes more sense to help people save energy in general.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they can be linked, but you know, looking at energy on a kilowatt hour basis almost strips out the source of that electricity, so it can stand alone.
Cool. We're saving energy with Omar and Energi Mine. Your pre-sale has just launched?
It has, yeah, just launched last night on the 17th of November, and it runs all the way to January when we go into the ICO.
All right, so this will be presented on our website, I think, or on YouTube in a week or two. So it'll still be going on. And how much are you trying to raise?
So our cap is at 15 million, 15.
Great, awesome. Yes, right. This is the answer I wanted. I didn't know that, by the way. And if you were going to say over 20, I was prepared to pounce.
Yeah, I mean, just when we were thinking of this, we've got a plan for $5, $10, and $15 million, and we decided that anything above that, and we can't really spend it in a meaningful way right now.
Right,
so.
And you need to that's plenty of money to prove and show a system really working. So that's awesome. I applaud that. Okay, anything last you want to tell our audience?
No, that's great. I really appreciate everyone listening, and you can find out more information at energitoken.com, and it's energy with an I. EnergiIToken.com. This has been my conversation with Omar at Energi Mine. Listen, don't take ICO advice from friends or YouTube gurus. They don't know anything about investing. YouTube experts have no clue, and they just like pumping themselves up and making a big spectacle of how smart they are, but no one can tell the future. I'd like everyone here to who's watching to take the Marginal Revolution course on money skills. We're going to put the link down below. I thank Ash, Will, Ellen, Tony, and others for their hard work. We could actually use a couple more volunteers. We want to build an online community for the ICO show. Please contact us, theicoshow@gmail.com if you want to get involved. I'm David Siegel. Stay safe out there.